leave off? Okay. We're talking about exercise. Okay, so another topic is counter conditioning. Responses to things. Really cool trainer on TikTok. His dog training business is called Say It Once Dog Training.
Yep.
I really like watching his videos. I was watching a particular one where a dog would freak out if the owner's cell phone went off. Just even like a ding, like absolutely
I've seen
freak
that before.
out. Yeah. And so he was counter conditioning.
What?
He was counter conditioning the response to the cell phone by using treats in a basket full of tennis balls. So he didn't appear to be correcting the dog at all, and he's a balance trainer.
Sure.
And I just saw the process of like the dog is rooting through this basket of tennis balls, and the cell phone's going off and off and off and off. And every time the dog looks at the cell phone, he throws a treat in the basket of balls. And he's just trying to condition a different response from that dog. So I found that pretty interesting. But how would you go about that? Like if a client came to you and their dog freaked out every time a cell phone went off.
What was the freaking out? Do you know?
Like biting, barking, lunging, jumping, trying to get the cell phone. It was a big bulldog, so pretty serious stuff. And this guy just seemed to like so seamlessly fix it. But
Go ahead.
Is that not the same as a doorbell? And a dog freaking out
Sure.
at a doorbell?
It's a conditioned
right?
response to something,
Yeah.
right?
So what do
Which
we
could
do
be for
when-
whatever. I mean, I don't know what exactly the reinforcement is behind why the dog does it with a cell phone, but
Yeah. Do you guys hear that?
yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Do you have more to say about it?
Oh, well, I guess.
We're going to call this the awkward podcast.
Awkward
silence. I'm
Lots of
sorry.
awkward silences spilled throughout.
I'm sorry. I thought you were continuing with something.
No. Take the reins.
I honestly, I guess I don't really know that much about counter conditioning because I don't think that we use it that.
What is counter conditioning? Hey, it went away. The hum.
Yeah.
What is it?
Whatever the dog's response is, flipping it, basically doing a 180 response.
Creating a new conditioned association with a behavior that had a negative conditioned association.
Yeah.
Right? So does it work? Sure. Right? Like you said, I mean, it obviously worked in this case. You know, I've seen before in the past people condition the doorbell to mean to get onto the bed, right? You condition in that cue that typically had a certain meaning now has the meaning of getting onto the bed for something positive.
How
right?
is that not classical conditioning?
It is classical conditioning. You use classical conditioning to counter condition something,
okay.
right? Classical conditioning
don't
is just
mind
the process of conditioning something, right? Counter conditioning is you're reconditioning something with counter conditioning that had a different association, right?
Yeah.
So you're taking it, this stimuli means this, and you're changing it to this stimuli means this,
Yeah.
right? So it's you're correct, right? Here's my issue with a lot of it, right? Not that it doesn't work, but, right? Let's start looking at some of the common things that people would counter condition, right? Touching paws, putting collars on, petting, doorbells, things like that, reactivity, right? All of these different things, right? It's the idea, my problem with it is the idea that you're going to make everything have a positive association and that is not real life, right? And it is not sustainable because of outside competing reinforcement, right? I think that most of these things, doorbell, for example, right? I think the actual reinforcement of somebody being at the front door is a stronger reinforcement than the association you're going to create of the dog getting onto the bed when they hear it. Right. And I think that just like you counter condition it one way, I think it will quickly counter it condition itself back to the original in time. Right. Touching paws. Right. Obviously, because the dog already has a negative association with touching the paws, I think in time, that negative association of the times that it scares the dog is going to be more powerful than the positive association you're going to create with touching the paws. Right. Does that make sense? So I think where I prefer to use it is I prefer to stop whatever the response is first. That way I eliminate that reinforcement so it doesn't come back. Then I will counter condition the association to something more positive after, right? Let's use this example, right? If I stop that response of the dog freaking out and biting and jumping and I correct for it, and then I go through the process of creating a positive association with that tone, I think I'm going to have a much more balanced, longer lasting response out of the dog, right? I look at this very similar to fearful dogs, right? And people that call us and say, I have a dog that's scared of everything, needs more confidence and stuff. And I always ask themselves, is the problem that your dog doesn't have confidence, or is the problem the responses your dog has when they get scared? Right? Because no matter what, there are going to be things in life that scare your dog. There are going to be things in life that your dog has a negative response to, right? That will not, I don't think that will go away, right? And if you spend all your time counter conditioning those things, you don't teach the dog to adapt to the stress and adapt to the fear and to face that head on and be more confident and stable through that, right? So I think it has a time and a place where you could spend time working through certain things, and maybe. Let's say you do it the reverse order. Let's say, because I don't disagree with what the guy did, obviously. I just think that long term, it's probably not going to be the only solution for it. Let's say you spend the time counter conditioning like that, so you teach a positive association with it. You teach what's expected, right? Then when that behavior resurfaces later on, you punish it really firmly, right? I don't have a problem with that either. I just prefer to do it the other way around because I think it's faster and I think it's a little bit more effective.
I also think like a big, this probably isn't going to be worded that well, but a big negative side to it is, are a lot of owners going to do that with everything that their dog has a bad response to?
No, because it's too time consuming.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's like the
basketball's out.
Yeah, it was probably just a highlight reel of that dog's best.
Oh yeah.
But I'm sure that dogs
For sure.
exhibiting that behavior, those negative behaviors elsewhere.
I was just going to say that too,
Yeah.
right? Is that the only place in this dog's life that it does shit like that? Probably not.
Yeah. So
Right?
now you have to counter condition everything that your dog has that response to.
Yeah.
And this is a hard one, right? Because like if we look at what's the proper way to do things, right? I talk about this a lot. If I were to have everything perfect and train a dog exactly how I envision my head the correct way to train a dog would be, right? I would spend the time building food drive and teaching everything with it, working around low distractions, creating really positive associations with things, layering in very light communication through the leash, layering in very light communication with the e-collar, starting to add in bigger consequences later. And I would take this long process with teaching all this kind of stuff, right? Same with the counter conditioning process. I would try my hardest to create as much of a positive association with stuff as possible and reinforce the things that I liked so the dog knew what I expected out of them so that the consequences would be more clear to them and blah, 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 right? I just don't think that's real life with our clients.
Yeah.
Know?
Well, no, a lot of the dogs that we get have already been practicing those negative behaviors or not being put in situations with like a positive association or whatever it is, where I think if you start from ground zero, you're able to work through that. But there was Michael Ellis said one time how he had like one of his Malinois, like he tried to go as long as he could with only positive training. And he said 2 years in, never corrected the dog, but then he had to, and he started implementing. But that dog stressed out so much more from a correction because it had never had a consequence before, So like that, just a smaller correction created so much more stress for that dog.
Yeah. Gary Wilkes had a really interesting thing that he talked about in his seminar that I went to, where he talked about intermittent stress is very, very healthy for all beings, right? For dogs, for people, for whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the idea was if you teach the dog to tolerate, not tolerate, but if you teach them to work through that and rebound back from that more regularly, it's not as dramatic when it actually happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of it too. Like we spend all this time doing these things trying to avoid stress.
Yeah.
Right. does that create a balanced dog? If if I have the most perfect life, right, and everything is easy and everything goes my way and blah, 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 and then suddenly something really negative happens, that's going to be detrimental to somebody, right? Where if you get used to the ups and downs of life, right, you kind of know how to dig yourself back out of those holes a little bit more successfully, right? And this is the way that I've always tried to look at this kind of stuff is I think that the way we do it, where we try to focus on both sides and we don't try to avoid one side more than the other, I think creates a more balanced dog in the end.
Yeah.
And again, all of this is kind of hypothetical to an extent. Like there's no studies, I don't think, that say like this is right, this is wrong, right? Everybody's got their own approach. It's just when you look at these things and you look at the way that we're doing it, you look at the way that they're doing it, I have a really hard time seeing the long-term success of some of those ways. And I feel like I could see more holes in them than not. So
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Schitt's Creek on Netflix?
I've never
What?
watched
I
it.
love Schitt's
Yeah,
Creek.
it's a great show.
I've
It's
heard
literally-
great. I've heard it's great.
Yeah, they were like the super rich family, and then they lost everything.
Oh yeah.
So like especially the kids, because
Yeah.
like they have to
Yeah.
like live in a motel. Like that's where it like pretty much all takes place, and they're just have no idea
Actually-
what's going on.
Yeah, and what's the daughter's name?
Alexis.
Alexis. Yeah, her saying is "Ew, David," and that's on a T-shirt and it's
Yeah.
on a lot of stuff. Anyways,
I'm gonna get you guys
own some
all
of-
that shirt.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
it'd be really funny.
But it was just a funny correlation. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
there it was. They were spoon fed their whole life, and
Yeah.
they didn't know how to like get a job or anything like that.
I don't know. I don't know that many people with children because they're monsters, but
Oh my god.
but I feel like people are so sensitive about their dog going through stress, and it's not the same with their kids. People baby their pets so much more.
I don't know. I work with a lot of families with children that are very, very micromanaging of their kids
Oh,
with
really?
stuff like that.
Yeah, see, I
to
don't know.
avoid issues and like holding their hand through things and stuff.
So you see it transfer to the dogs too?
Yeah.
Or- yeah.
Oh,
Do you have
no, I'm
any-
just saying in general. I think people do it both ways,
Yeah.
right?
Do you find that any of your clients that have children are not harder, but have more strict rules with their children, but not with their dogs?
Depends on the honestly, it depends on the generation. I feel like I work with a lot of 55-year-old moms and stuff, 60-year-old moms and stuff who just like they grew up raising their kids with like, you
Yeah.
better listen, you know, and they're very firm on their dogs as well, and they
Yeah.
don't really take shit from them,
Yeah.
you know. But some of the younger couples and stuff, I feel like are a little opposite.
Yeah,
Younger couples with children, I should say.
I could see that
So
for sure.
cool. Next.